Welcome back to the Fullstack JavaScript projects. This is the project number 4. It's in the folder 04 board-parse-rest. We will start with the index.html file, which has the message board HTML. It consists of the h1 element, which will be our title. Then it had the table. We have 2 columns, names and the messages. This will be the list of messages in our message board. And then by default the list will be empty because we need to get the data from the server first. So an empty list, it's not good, so we will show the spinner image, the one that you've seen many times. It's a GIF image, spinner.gif. And then at the bottom of our list we will have the form. This form will have 2 input fields, one for the names and one for the texts of the messages. The key to remember here is that we're using name equals double quotes username and name equals double quotes message. This is important because you need to use exactly the same thing in your JavaScript file to get the values. You can use IDs or you can use other selectors, but you need to use the same thing in both places. And then the send button, which will enable us to send the messages. In this case we use ID equal double quote send. And the actual application file will be in app.js, which we include with the script file in our head. We have Twitter Bootstrap, of course, and we have jQuery. So let's go to app.js. In app.js we have the keys. Please use your own keys, replace these values. You don't want to use someone else's keys. And as you might already know, document.ready is the jQuery function that enables us to wait for the whole document to get loaded, for the whole page to be ready for us. And the first thing we're doing, we're calling this function getMessages. GetMessages is a hoisted function. It means the definition doesn't have to precede the invocation, and the syntax for hoisted function is function then the name of the function. So it's below our document.ready, and in this function in getMessages what we're doing, we're using this Ajax method from jQuery library, so $.ajax, and then we basically are submitting a RESTful request to the parse.com. The way we do it, we pass the keys in headers. So you can see we have the headers object. These values on the left side, don't change them, but the values on the right side, you need to have your own in order for parse.com to recognize your application. So if you're using someone else's and then you're looking into your app, it's not going to work. Then another important thing is this URL. So basically this URL, it has the name of your entity, the name of your application or the database. You can call it any way you want. And then the question mark, it's a query data. It has limit equal 1000. So by default parse is limiting the results to 100. If you want more than that, and I have more than 100 messages because I've been testing this same application many times, so I'm putting 1000. So if you submitting new message and you have over 100 of messages, you don't see your new message coming up on the screen, maybe you need to increase the limit. So parse can increase the response set. And then once we get successfully everything back, the response comes back, we call this function, it's called update view. It's another hosted function and we pass the data to it. So let's look at update view. It's very simple. All we're doing, we're iterating through this messages.results, which is a list of messages. It's an array. And what we're doing, we're constructing this string. It has trtd. which are HTML elements for the row and the cell. Once we constructed the string, we append it to the table. We get the table using this jQuery selector. So I assume you have only one table in your HTML. That's why I'm using tbody, and then that table, it's a class table. That's it. We appended the messages to the table. So let's go back to the document ready. After we get the messages, we see the list of the messages, right? So that's good, but that's just half of the job. We also need to be able to submit new messages. That's the way we do it. We attach this event listener to the send button. We're using #send, which means ID send, to get that button, and then we're using click. Then I'm saving the reference in $send button because I'll be using it later, and I'm using this HTML method to put the spinner inside of the text. This way, if someone clicks on send and nothing happens for a few milliseconds, they would not freak out. They would not think this app is not responsive. They would see the spinning instead of the text, and then they would know that something is happening. So they just need to wait. So just a nicer user experience, especially when you're working with asynchronous applications and single page applications. It's a good practice to do that. And then we're getting the values, our name and our message. We're taking it from the inputs. And again, you see this jQuery Ajax function. This time the URL is different. There is no limit. The headers are the same. Probably you want to abstract it into an object instead of hard coding it each time you make a request. And then another important thing here is the actual data. The data to create a new object, the username and the message. We stringify it, and then we put it in a data property. So far so good. In case of the successful response, we call that get messages again. So this might not be the most effective way to do this, because you might just push your new message into the stack without getting the list of fresh messages. But I find it better and cleaner, because what if someone else is submitting messages at the same time to this message board, right? So this way you get the fresh list of messages. And then we replace that spinner with the send text. So now let me show you this file index.php. This is the way we can trick Heroku to deploy the static file. There are other ways to do that, of course. This is probably one of the earliest hacks. So for now, let's go and start it locally first. So I'm in my terminal. This is the entire repository, and I'm launching my favorite local web server. It's called static or node-static in npm. And then let's go to the browser. Let me refresh it. So the address is localhost :8080/04-board-parse-rest. So we need that folder name because we started the server in the whole root of the repository, not in the project. Okay, and let me refresh it again to show you the spinner wheel. Okay, so the spinner is spinning before we get the list of messages. It takes a few milliseconds, maybe a few hundred milliseconds. And at the bottom we see this message. We see this form to submit a new message. So now I'm about to click send. The send text will disappear and we will see the spinner again. And then we will see the send once the message is posted. Okay, so I hope you saw the spinner change in the button and then the message appearing here. So that That is how it runs locally. Now let's try to create a Heroku app and deploy it in the cloud. So I'm in a console, in the terminal again. I just stopped my static web server and I'm going to the folder, the project folder. So firstly, I need to create a GitHub repository. Let me take it back. I need to create a Git repository. I don't need GitHub for this, but I need Git. The way to do it is git init. And as you can see, there is .git folder now. It didn't exist before. And also, I'm using this plugin. It shows me that this folder is dirty, which means there are some uncommitted changes. So let's add all the files here to this new repository and commit it. Okay, so now the dirty sign is gone. I can do git log. Okay, I see my commit. That's great. Now let's go ahead and create Heroku app. If you haven't used Heroku before, probably you'll need to use Heroku login, provide your credentials. You need to do it just once. So I already did it, I'm not going to do it. And you can find the instructions in the book. So I'm using Heroku create. That it will do two things. First, it will create application in the cloud. And second, it will create Git remotes to push to that cloud. Click enter. Okay, so now we get this name. Heroku always has these funny names, usually consist of 2 words and then some number. So this would be our URL, but if we go there now, there would be nothing because we didn't push the code yet. How would we push the code? So let me show you git remote -v. That shows you that Heroku create added some destinations into our local Git repository. This is how we would push the code and deploy it. Git push Heroku is this name on the left, Heroku. If you push to GitHub, it would be origin, but we're pushing to Heroku, not GitHub. And we want to push master branch. So this will push the code, deploy it. We would see nice logs. Okay, PHP app is detected because we had index.php, but this is really a static file. And we would see successful message. After that, we can do 2 things. We can see the logs, but there's really nothing. Heroku logs. There's really nothing because we didn't do anything. A better way would be to use Heroku open. And now it even automatically opens the browser for you. So we saw that spinner, and this is our application. So now it's in the cloud. I still have this window open. Let's try to send a message, see if it works. Okay, it works. And then if I go back here, so I'm launched this local version as well. So now I have 2 versions using the same parse database, and I see this new message here. This is the message I created in the cloud. And you can share this link with the whole world. Now it's public, it's available to anyone. Anyone can go and use your message board. This is it for this project. See you in the next video.